You're listening to Discography Discussion, episode 283, In Vain. Hosted by Dan Terry.
Congratulations for unironically being that guy.
And Joseph Wren. This summer's been interesting. Presented by discussmetal.com. And if you're rotting in vain but still get to headbang, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe. That is Dan. Who knew tonight was the night you'd get saxophone with your black metal, Dan?
Well, I mean, is it really saxophone with my black metal? It's more like, man, I don't know. This band, In Vain, they go all over the place. There's like, I get doom vibes, I get progressive metal vibes, I get Opeth vibes, I get black metal vibes, death metal vibes, Tom Waits vibes in a few places that I wasn't expecting. So yeah, this band goes all over the map as far as different sounds and incorporating different ideas into very, very long songs and relatively long albums.
I enjoyed the vibe, but you are 100% correct. This band takes multiple turns, some into the Candiria side of everything. Sometimes they go into Opeth territory. Sometimes dude shreds his vocals and then they sing the most beautiful sonnet with the most classic sounding of instruments, and eventually the sonic pile of everything that's happening is amazing. It's epic at times, but it's still heavy. It's not Between the Buried and Me. It's not Opeth. It's none of those progressive metal bands. It's all the vibes and all the chill from your favorite band thrown together into one awesome mix.
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly a mix. I'm going to get into how I feel about how awesome it is, but I will preface this by saying these guys are definitely some of the most talented players that I've heard and some of the most diverse musicians that I've heard. But I'll get into how that sort of translates into an album listening experience from our perspective. I mean, keep in mind, we are guys that will listen to a band's whole discography in a week, so there are going to be little nuances that might get missed. Hopefully not, but we'll give you our overall impressions as we always do. But before that, to business. I have to read a few. Oh yeah, I have to read a few comments.
We don't talk about business at the table, Dan.
Well, we're going to talk about it tonight because I got a few things to get off my chest here. Okay, so I'm going to start off. I'm going to start off easy. We're going to go with some YouTube comments that we got. One was on episode 241. Niall. This was Mezzy Mez, who said Metallica aren't the first ones to use the funeral toll. Hell's Bells by AC/DC did it first. So you saying Niall copied the funeral toll from Metallica makes no sense.
To be clear, what I said was the toll that they use, meaning the sound of the bell, is the same sample from Ride the Lightning. At least, if it's not the same sample, it's the same damn bell.
Right, so if you had said that it was the same one as Hell's Bells and somebody commented that, Metallica used it too, like both statements are true. But like I understand true? That you just...
Is the Hell's Bells tone what they used for Ride the Lightning? If they did, then somebody pitched it up and I didn't notice.
It might have been. It might have been the same sound clip. It might not have been. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I mean, I appreciate your comments and I appreciate that you listened to the episode. But, we talked about a lot of things in that episode, and it's just interesting that you honed in on this. But, hey, it is what it is, I guess. Also on YouTube, we got a comment from Renato Marilli on the Symphony X episode with John and Brian from Talking Into Infinity. And I was not actually on that episode, so all negative comments are all directed at Joe here. But Renato says, Joe's comments on the keyboards don't make any sense. He did not elaborate specifically on what those comments were, but it may have been helpful. I mean, we are like not guys that just get mad whenever you leave us comments. We do appreciate comments, but if we do say something wrong or get something wrong, I have no problem with like correcting those issues. But, you know, Joe did sort of chime in. He goes, I'm not sure what you mean, but whatever it is, it was my opinion. Might change over time. We'll see. Good news is we had Brian, an actual keyboardist, to correct any mistakes we made. Thanks for listening to the show. And I mean, yeah, like if you're gonna point out like what is wrong with something that we said, please be more specific. Like this next guy was very specific about what he thought that we said. So we got a comment on Facebook in reference to our atheist episode, which just posted, I think, a few episodes back. And Devin Briggs comes in hot and says, listen to your latest podcast on Atheist. I don't know how the hell you could say that Atheist was influenced by Mudvayne when Atheist had most of their albums out before Mudvayne existed. All caps, so we know you mean business. I don't know how a group can do a podcast and not do their research beforehand when Google takes less than a second to open. Not impressed. Joe, did we say that? Did we say that Atheist was influenced by Mudvayne?
Hang on a second.
I gotta say, that bass tone is so clean.
So clean.
I mean, I would pick it up and eat it right off the floor.
We're in some Mudvayne dig Death Blooms territory with that bass tone, guys.
Please don't mention Mudvayne on my Atheist episode.
I already mentioned Ghost.
I know, man. You're just like, see. A couple weeks ago, we had a guy like send us an angry tweet about like, you guys should just keep listening to Disturbed and Danzig and stuff. And then every single week, Joe has thrown something in just to piss that person off. And so I appreciate it and I love it, but he's not wrong. It does have a clean bass tone, very similar to early Mudvayne. So who influenced who? I think Mudvayne grew up listening to Atheist because they should have. That might be why that's like maybe the most progressive nu metal album I've ever heard. More on that in the Mudvayne episode.
There you go.
Okay, so I did make sure to clean my ears out really, really, really well so that I could get the full gist of what was said. And yeah, dude, we didn't say that. So like, I don't know what you're on about. I did respond to the Facebook comment, but the guy didn't respond. But in case you missed the sound clip, I mean, well, no, you know what? The sound clip speaks for itself. We clearly didn't say that. But the irony here is that, you know, Joe and I did joke about the fact that we mentioned Mudvayne on the Atheist episode was probably going to piss somebody off. So congratulations for unironically being that guy.
2 points to that guy.
Good job, that guy. It's not all negative comments though. In reference to our Red Chord episode, we had a comment from Jimmy Rohrer, and I apologize if I'm not saying your name right, Jimmy. I know we talk on the Facebook group all the time. But Jimmy says, thank you so much for the Red Chord episode. I'm from Boston. And yeah, man, we like this was seriously like the Red Chord episode was one of the most fun ones to do because I already loved that band going into it, which is always kind of a slam dunk for me. But I'll tell you what, man, they're one of the most interesting bands in that genre, and they don't really get talked about enough, I don't feel. So I'm glad that we were able to sort of get our say in on everything going on with the Red Chord.
It was a fun chat. I enjoy all the bands we talk about on this podcast, except for one, historically speaking. This summer's been interesting. I feel like we focused on the opposite of Christian metal, which for listeners of this show, for longtime listeners of the show, might seem odd because Dan's one of the experts on the topic, at least in my opinion, but we're going to make it up to you. So don't get frustrated. We talked about so many evil sounding bands because we're going to talk about some, well, not so evil sounding bands very soon.
Yeah, Discuss Metal Live. We're going to talk about what the deal is with Christian metal on Discuss Metal Live, you know, because I feel like that's either going to like really make you happy or really upset you. We're going to talk about, you know, the history of the style. We're going to talk about how it became a thing, why it became a thing, and whether or not we think it's a good thing. And as you guys can tell, Joe, myself, and Mike all come from vastly different points of view on this particular subject. So it is going to be an interesting one that you are not going to want to miss. And if you guys end up liking that or watching it live, Keep in mind that we do have our monthly Patreon hangout right after Discuss Metal Live. So keep sending us emails, guys. danandjoeshow@gmail.com. Leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app, or leave us a 1-star review. It really doesn't matter what you say. We'll read it on the show, either to our own entertainment or to our own adulation. So you decide how you want to make us feel as far as that goes. Guys, have you ever wanted to sponsor an episode of this podcast? Because you totally can. If you go to patreon.com/discussmetal, not only do we have some sweet perks like a monthly hangout, individual album reviews, but we're giving you guys 2 opportunities. You can sponsor an episode, or you can skip the wait. What does skip the wait mean? Skip the wait means that you don't have to wait 3 or 4 years until I, quote, get around to talking about a band that you want us to talk about right now. So hit us up on Patreon. Let us know what bands you want us to talk about. And, keep if you are okay with waiting around, keep those suggestions coming. When we first started this podcast, I was probably a fan of like 50 bands. And, most of the bands we talk about now are suggested by you guys, the listeners. So we really appreciate those suggestions and keep them coming. We will put them on our long list. We will get to them unless you decide you want to go on Patreon and skip the wait.
There's one more thing. The Discord server, discord.discussmetal.com. We are hanging out all the time with our discography discussion listeners, our fans, our patrons, our community. We play games sometimes. We take all the suggestions. We talk about all the metal. It's a really cool hangout, guys. You need to get on that Discord server if you're not. So, Dan, tell me and the listener all about In Vain.
All right, so here's the deal with In Vain. In Vain is a progressive death metal band from Kristiansand, Norway. I hope I said that the right way. I'm sure there's some accentuation on that name, but it reads as Kristiansand to me. Christian with a K. And these guys are, like I said in the intro, these guys are all over the place as far as influence. I mean, yeah, they call themselves or maybe other people call them a progressive death metal band. That's what they're tagged as. But I think that it's sort of unfair to say that they're a progressive death metal band, because they are a lot more than that. There's a lot going on here. Like we talked about, there's power metal moments, there's classic heavy metal moments, there's doom moments, there are progressive rock elements, there's a saxophone, if that sweetens the deal for anybody, and a very, very interesting mix of clean vocals and extreme vocals and slow, sort of forlorn atmospheric moments mixed with high energy blasting. And on paper, this sounds exactly like what I want out of a band.
The first record, The Latter Rain, came out in 2007. Watching the band develop over the 11 years of their discography, it's interesting how many of the extreme progressive death metal tropes they don't follow. This band never picks up the BT Bam flag and says, we can do that too. You can tell they're fans of extreme metal, but they're also fans of melodic music. And they use the mix in a way I haven't heard in an acoustic band. They have an electronic vibe at times. It all fits together, but it's weird. It shouldn't work all the time, but I enjoy every second of it. When I think I'm going to get bored with heavy vocals and double bass, they just turn left. We have a saxophone now. Remember when you listened to Seth ECT and you loved that? We've got that. Remember that time you heard that Opeth record for the first time and it was melodic but extreme at the same time? Yeah, we go there some. This first record opens with a symphonic overture. I don't know what I'm going to get. And what a shock when I finally get it.
Well, that song, The Latter Rain, goes into the actual first song of the album. With these progressive bands, there's always got to be an intro, right? I don't think there needs to be, but yeah, I mean, they come in hot with a 9-minute song in the midnight hour, and this thing is, again, it's all over the place, and it's weird because it starts off sounding like something that you would hear on like Amorphous' Tales from a Thousand Lakes. You know, like it's very like
nice.
It's got that sort of like doomy, almost like folksy sort of vibe to it, and I'm like, okay, so maybe we're like doing sort of a doom thing. It's a little symphonic, but it's faster than you would get out of regular doom. I'm not going to do a track by track rundown, but the interesting thing about this song is that once you hit like 4 minutes into this song, you get sort of this slower, like acoustic sounding Tom Waits type of vocal. And once I got to that point in the song, I was like, okay, I've already been a lot of places here in 5 minutes or so, 4 minutes, 5 minutes in. And you guys are doing this Tom Waits thing. And at that point, I was like, I think I'm going to like really, really, really enjoy this. They're doing a lot of really cool, unexpected things. But the more I sort of dove into this record, the more I started hearing things that sounded too familiar. I mean, like, if you listen to track 4, October's Monday, you would really have a hard time convincing me that this was not a song by Opeth. And I'm not saying that they're ripping off of Opeth. I'm saying that Opeth is a progressive death metal band. In Vain is a progressive death metal band. Sometimes they're going to do similar things. And so I'm not accusing the band of being ripoffs. I think that these guys are very, very talented musicians, and they can play a variety of different styles within one song. But I don't necessarily know if that works from a listening perspective. Because one of my favorite things about progressive music is how it all sort of ties back together into itself. And whenever you're done with the experience, you're like, okay, so that made a lot of sense. And I could sort of feel the journey that I was on. And I'm not finding that with this band. Like, spoilers, I feel that way specifically about this album. They do a lot of different things. They do a lot of really cool different things. But I'm starting to wonder if they're doing cool thing just to be doing cool thing versus actually writing complex progressive songs. And I'll preface this by saying that they're obviously better musicians than I am and better songwriters than I am. But with these types of bands, we did just get done talking about Rivers of Nihil and even Atheist, which was really out there, But I think that with this band especially, I enjoy what I'm hearing while I'm hearing it. But man, it's really hard to remember it. The parts that are supposed to stick out to me don't always stick out to me. And I will concede that maybe if I'd been listening to this album since 2007, I wouldn't think that. I'd have it all memorized by now. And I've listened to these 4 albums several times. When a band has a shorter discography, it gives us an opportunity to listen a little bit more, listen a little bit deeper, and that is sort of required for these like more progressive style bands. So like overall, I felt that this record was good. You can't point at their playing and say it's bad or say anything's wrong with it. It's just a little too samey to other progressive death metal bands that I've heard, and it doesn't feel concise to me. It's a minor nitpick for a record that is enjoyable to listen to. I don't want you to think this is going to like, oh God, they found one little thing wrong with it and they're just going to stick with that and say angry things about that. I mean, we're not Facebook commenters,
I think this album suffers a bit from production. It sounds thin at times, but I don't think it's the worst thing because they are using so many layers. They're using the symphonic pieces, they're using the extreme metal pieces, and they're not oversaturating the mix. They're letting you hear all the notes. Even when they're being played softly, they still come through distorted and you get the point. I think this album, and it might be the running theme for this episode, this record is a fever dream of sonic choices. It feels a bit like play that part, now play this part, now play this part, but that happens all the time in extreme metal. The end result, is it entertaining? And I'm with you. I haven't listened to this record enough to really appreciate how good it is, but I enjoyed it while I was listening to it. So given some time, this might be up there with the Between the Buried and Me records that took more than one listen to really get.
I agree with that to a certain extent, but I do think this is more directionless. I don't think that repeated listens are going to make me think that this is more cohesive than it is, but I'm not going to focus on that too much. I think overall it is an enjoyable record to listen to, and I think you should check it out for yourself and decide for yourself. If you like that sort of ADHD approach
Hey, y'all.
to songwriting, then this band is going to be your band. You're going to think that, like, man, where have these guys been my whole life? They're technically awesome. And they literally play all of the styles that I like. No, seriously, all at once. They play all of them. But I think overall I could use a little bit more cohesion in the songwriting, right? But if they were a grindcore band, I would turn right around and be all like, I need more variety in the songwriting, right? So take that with a grain of salt, the best that you can.
Is this record closer to Candiria than Opeth?
No, I don't think so. I think at times it's a little too much like Opeth, but also Opeth also has, God, these guys listening to the episode, they're like, God, what? They compared November's Doom to Opeth constantly, even though the band hates that. No, it's not. I think that Opeth writes better songs overall, at least later on in their career. I mean, if you go back really far, you get stuff like this, that's a little bit more directionless. I want to say it's directionless because it's not. It sounds like I'm trashing this record, but I didn't have a bad time listening to it. It's just that I don't know how much I'm going to return to it because I don't remember what I'm returning to a lot of the time.
It's more clever than interesting.
Yeah, that's the word. Clever. It's more clever than interesting. And that, like, oh, I see what you guys did there, and I wasn't expecting that. And I think that's super cool. And then an hour later, I'm like, what did I just listen to? And hopefully, if you bought it, go ahead and listen to it again because you bought it and you got it for life now. But I think in this particular case, it's a good start to introduce you to the concept of them playing their version of progressive death metal. I don't necessarily hear any similarities to Candiria in the sense that I can't speak necessarily to approach to songwriting, but Candiria also was very good at like sort of blending things, at least on their later records. But this is the band's first record, and you may notice the common theme here that when bands like this start off, maybe sometimes their music does seem a little bit more directionless. So let's see what we get moving forward.
2010, Mantra. Okay, now it's Opeth.
It's a little bit like Opeth. It's not Opeth. Opeth never wrote a song like On the Banks of Mississippi, right? No, not even close.
I'm going to do my best.
I officially disagree with you, sir. I will send you official notification in the mail.
I'm going to do my best to stop comparing this band to Opeth now. I like this record because it starts with that mellow, swampy vibe and then throws the epic open or the epic close of the metal record in your face. Track 9, track 10, after they've been slaughtering your face with riffs and they're just playing melodic chords and growling to try and hammer home this idea that this song is sad or this song is happy or the message is good or the message is bad, whichever way you want to go, the end result is the record starts off faster, it gets to the point quicker, and I think this is the best starting point because The Latter Rain was not bad, but it wasn't focused. This record, they know who they are now, and they have the songwriting chops to write a better record. Maybe the first record was just, we have these ideas and we're trying to fit them together. Let's just lay them down and get it out of our system. Now we can write some seriously brutal shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the heavier parts hit harder on this record. I do think that the band is more based overall in what they're trying to accomplish. Whereas I think that like the last record was very like, look at this cool thing that we can do. Oh, but this thing that I'm about to do is even cooler, right? On this record, it's more like, let's make a plan and stick to it, And that doesn't take away from the variety at all. This band still goes all over the place. I mean, you've got the song like Ain't No Lovin', which is actually like a weird name for a song that's as brutal as that one is. But that one's got some serious like groove and like old school death metal vibes to it, and I think it's cool. It's kind of like dry in a few way, in a little bit of a way, which this band hasn't really done before, like gone for that like dry, really brutal guttural sound. But then you've got songs like I mentioned before, like On the Banks of Mississippi, which is kind of a trip for me because like Joe and I actually like live right by the Mississippi River. And so it's interesting like hearing this band from Norway talk about the Mississippi River. Like it's interesting to me. And that song's kind of the highlight of the album for me. This guy is a good record. It's a more focused record. The band still isn't quite there for me yet, though. Musically, I like that they are heavier and they're a little bit more go for the throat, a little bit more guttural vocal, a little bit more focused on the death metal side of things, which for me is always extra points. Death metal guys always get free pizzas in my book. But this guy also comes in at a whopping 74 minutes. And I know, yep, he's going to complain about how long the records are. Like, do you even progressive metal, bro? Which, did lead to that conversation that we had on the Discord server about how I was like, guys, is it just me? Because I'm not allowed to say on the Discord server what band we're talking about because we don't ruin the surprise. But, like, I remember posing a question and there being like, are progressive metal bands just boring or do I have a short attention span? And, of course, everybody was really nice and gave their own well-articulated opinions on it, which led me to believe that it must just be me and my lack of an attention span. Because I have to admit, like, by the time you get to the song Somber Fall, Burdened Winter, that's an 11-minute song after I've already listened to so I've listened to 2 7-minute songs, an 8-minute song, and 3 9-minute songs. And then you're going to give me an 11-minute song after that. Like it's fine, but we could have trimmed a little bit of the fat here. There are some passages that go on a little bit too long. There are some ideas that maybe could have ended up on the cutting room floor. A 74-minute record, like I said, feel free to chalk all these comments up to me just having a short attention span. But this was hard to get through. This is a record that I had to listen to half of. And then listen to the other half of this as if it was a second record, like later on in the day. And typically for me, an album length like that is just a little too demanding of the listener. But feel free to disagree. I mean, that's a personal nitpick. It's not really a criticism because I do think that overall this is a better release than the last one was. It just goes on a little too long for me.
I think if you're going to write progressive music, there is a trope, and that is the long song that starts small and ends big. But there is an entirely different value to a song like White Walls than there is to Swim to the Moon. I get it, though. I think if you're in the progressive metal camp, or even just progressive music, you want the vibe. You want the long listen. Because you want the record to develop over time. You want to hear the ideas, you want to understand them, and you want to get lost in them. I heard Jeff say that so many times on previous episodes. I just get lost in the vibe and the atmosphere. So you have to be willing to do nothing but listen to the record. And, well, for Mr. Circleback over here and his 3-minute brutal songs, he wants to get to the next idea.
Terminus is 17 minutes long. It's a full-length album. It's amazing. Some of these prog bands that we listen to write entire songs longer than that album.
I think it's time for 2013's Enigma. Might be my favorite record by the band.
I'm inclined to agree with you, which doesn't really happen too often. Heavy. I mean, Against the Grain kicks in, and yeah, it's 7 minutes, but they're doing the In Vain thing better here than they've done on the previous 2 albums. But those albums are necessary listening to get to this point, if that makes sense. The buzzword of the episode, progression. You can hear that progression. You can hear them doing literally everything that I said to do on the last album. Not that they were listening to me or called me up during, their songwriting sessions. But this is sort of the record that I was wanting. That kind of trimmed fat, more focused on brutality, but then peppering in those interesting, cool elements. Really cool variations on clean vocals. I haven't really talked about that yet. We're gonna really see it in the next record, but like how versatile the vocals are on these records. And I know in certain cases it's different people doing different things. It doesn't always work for me, but I think on this record they keep it heavy, they keep it brutal. They're writing songs that are more cohesive, that you can sort of go on a journey and then go sort of full circle on it. It's a tight 57 minutes at 9 tracks, which for a progressive death metal band, that's pretty good in my book. That's a good length for an album. And I really think that these guys are on the cusp of like really breaking through and being like a really, really interesting band that progressive music fans are going to be into. And I think this record is sort of the first sign of that we're willing to sort of not use every single random idea that we have, but to like really mold these songs into things that are listenable and make sense and take you on something of a journey. Because I'm not trying to perpetuate the idea that you have to just make the same sound over and over and over again. You know, I mean, not everybody's AC/DC, not everybody's Napalm Death. I don't expect you to just do the same songs and albums that you've done before. But I do think that In Vain, in a strange way, is doing that. They're just trying to do what they did last time better each time and trying to sort of one-up the experience. And at this point in the discography, this is the most enjoyable record to just sit down and listen to and to really take it in. The production plays a huge part in this. This sonically sounds better than their previous 2 albums. It's much thicker. It has more atmosphere. It has more of a dynamic range overall. And I like the band's focus on riffing. The song Culmination of the Enigma is just like a band just riffing out awesome ideas, and I'm here for it. You know, it all works. It's all important, and it absolutely just makes me feel great. You know, I really, really enjoyed that song. It's a highlight of the album. It's right there, smack dab in the middle. And I think if you're going to check out one song, it's like your first song that you check out by this band, make it Culmination of the Enigma.
I want to emphasize how good this record is from a progressive perspective. I think the template for progressive metal bands starts with Opeth. It's that overwhelming double bass with very clean, fast picking, but melody and atmosphere on the top. That's usually where we start today. I think that this record is the perfect blend of what this band is, and it's the logical next step. When they've been releasing records now for 6 years, they finally hit the nail on the head. They're using the melodic vocals, they're using the heavy vocals, they've got the production perfect. The perfect balance of it doesn't sound like a reverb chamber, and it doesn't sound like a stadium, and it doesn't sound like a dry basement. It sounds like a record that you want to put on, you want to listen to, and you can hear everything that's happening. Huge props on the production for me. I don't know who mixed this record, but you could let this band play for 2 more hours, and we would be pushing into territory that is held strong by Between the Buried and Me and Opeth at that time. They had the lock on progressive metal, and I think In Vain is actually a contender now, but they're playing more interesting ideas. They're not being brutal for the sake of being brutal. And that's a philosophy that I noticed first with Opeth. Yes, the music is heavy, but it doesn't have to be heavy to still be brutal and interesting and to still give you those dark vibes. This record sounds like what the cover looks like. It sounds like a dark moon night.
Well, I guess we need to find out what the band is up to currently. Is that my worst transition? No, leave it in. I want people to hear how bad I am at this.
2018, Currents.
So this is the record where I struggled the most. There's a lot of the same elements that we sort of discussed on the last record This is another, 9-song, tight, 56-minute album. They actually got Matthew Heafy from, or Heffy, I guess, which I'm assuming that's the same Matthew Heffy from Trivium. Don't worry, we're going to do the episode on Trivium. Yeah, Matt, I don't know. It's interesting to me with this record because they got so tight and focused on Enigma that I was kind of like, all right, so this is a band that sort of knows what they're doing. They know what direction they want to go in, and they're executing it perfectly. But then you have this record, which they sort of start throwing in a whole bunch of random stuff that I don't necessarily think fits together very well. And I don't entirely understand why. There's weird, okay, I do understand why. I understand why because you have the progressive metal tag, right? And I don't think that everything needs to be fast and brutal and blasty and everything all the time. At least not with this band. So they still do a lot of stuff right, but I'm starting to hear them pepper in elements that I don't think really fit together. You have a song like Blood We Shed, which starts off relatively brutal, but then you get all the way to the 3.5 minute mark and you're kind of like, am I listening to the same song? Am I listening to the same band? These parts don't fit together in a way that's pleasing for me. So if it makes sense to you, it's fine, but there's just a lot of weird clean vocal choices on this that I'm not totally on board with. You'll go from a death metal vibe to this classic 80s metal vibe. And I know there's plenty of guys out there that that's their actual sexual preference. But for me, it's
wow,
more,
dude.
Well, I just got to say it, right? Because prog fans typically do not agree with the things that I say. So you take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I'm just not as big of a fan of the weird mix of clean vocals versus brutal vocals on this.
Hey everybody, it's Joe. I don't normally do this, but I was editing the show and I'm not sure if Dan meant to say it's their actual sexual preference, but I thought it was funny, so I decided to leave it in. All right, let's get back into it.
It's a minor nitpick. I think that the songwriting is solid for the most part, but it's really obvious to me when they're we're going to throw this in just because it's cool. And maybe that's a good enough reason, and I'm just nitpicky and have a short attention span. All of these things are true. But at the same time, it just wasn't a super enjoyable record for me.
Does it feel like we're progressive in name only? And what we really are is 2/3 of a good idea plus 2/3 of a good idea. Let's just stick them together and call it a 9-minute progressive epic.
I think that might be what's going on. I think the phrase I'm looking for is progressive for the sake of being progressive. And it's obvious that it's obvious that a lot of this stuff is being composed by one person. It's obvious to me anyway, and maybe it's a guess on my part, but it sounds like guitarist music. You know what I mean? Like the guy that plays guitar writes all the songs, and then he has the band, more or less come together and perform the songs and record the songs and all of that. And so I don't necessarily know if this is the result of, because normally I would say maybe there's just too much input in the songwriting that's leading to all this massive variety, but I don't think that's what it is. I think it's more you've got one guy sort of being I'm going to write some progressive metal songs right now, and they're going to go wherever I decide they're going to go. And we've already put 3 albums out that are in that genre. So the next one, we got to be more progressive. We need to be more open. Maybe they felt like the last one was a little bit too basic and a little too focused, and they still want to start adding in those other elements. But I just don't necessarily know if all those elements always work or if they even need to be there entirely. But I know that makes me the bad guy or whatever. I'm not out to ruin anybody's fun. But yeah, this one just didn't hit me for whatever reason. And again, I'll say this to the end of time. The performances are great. And the stuff that really works. And it sounds good, and I'm all about it. So I mean, overall, it was just kind of a mixed bag for me. I think that the last 2 records were more focused, and so I prefer listening to those. I think it may just be something with this band where every now and again you're going to get a really off the wall record, and sometimes you're going to get like a more like heaviness, more like sort of a doom death metal combo vibe. And I think that's where they're at their best, is that sort of sludgy sort of doom death metal combo. Whenever they do that, it sounds incredible. So I mean that's pretty much all I can say. It's fine. You know, like it's fine. It's listenable. It is more catchy than, you know, say the first album. I give the first album a free pass because it's the first album, you know. But once you're on album 4 and I'm getting thrown like this, I'm a little thrown off by that. But I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
I think this record is good, but I'm getting that same feeling I got the first time I heard The Great Misdirect. It didn't just sound like a Colors ripoff. It sounded intentionally like a forced ripoff. Not the band going a completely different direction and saying, we know we can't do that again yet, so we're going to try something different. It was, no, we know we can't do it again, so we're just going to embrace the fact that we're trying to make it sound that cool again. And that record was not bad. There was one bad song that lasted 2/3 of the record. But I think the answer to your question came from that conversation in the Discord server. We had Tantalized Funyuns talking about listening to, best name ever, by the way, talking about listening to progressive metal and then moving away from it, listening to better songwriting, and now the seemingly random progressive metal doesn't hold your attention anymore. So is the message then stop listening to reasonably written music and it'll make sense? And that's not the only comment we got on that thread. I'm trying not to throw it to the king, but I think Lance Algood, the king of metal, just answers the question, and sometimes I agree. I think there's more outliers of good progressive metal bands, but there are so many good progressive rock bands. And I'm going to quote the king himself. Potentially unpopular opinion. Progressive rock is vastly better than progressive metal. Yes, Close to the Edge not only welcomes all comers, but will soundly destroy them. Think about Yes for a second, Dan. Do you remember the first time you sat and listened to Heart of the Sunrise?
Yeah, I remember when you forced me to do that. Yeah.
But you remember it.
I do remember it. I mean, it's okay. As far as the progressive rock thing is, I'm going to be that guy again. See, I accused somebody of commenting and unironically being that guy. I'm also unironically being that guy. I can't do progressive rock. I'm even dumber when it comes to that stuff. I'm like, what is going on right now? You know, like the fact that I even like, you know, I've even considered doing a Rush episode on this podcast. Or a Yes episode, and I know like people want to hear us talking about those, but trust me, you're going to be dissatisfied with what I say. Like, I just want to warn, like, you think you want that as an episode, but really you do not.
So Pink Floyd's still on the table then?
No. I'm just gonna expose myself for what I am. I'm kind of a basic bro, and I think that is part of the reason why I struggle with this type of stuff. Because I know that from a technical standpoint, it is good, you know, and I know that, like, and I can appreciate I can appreciate the variety and the different aspects of stuff. But I think my basic broness dictates of like, I like this cool thing that you did, but if the cool thing that you did doesn't jive with me, then I'm like, oh, you know, I'm not into that at all. It must be bad, right? It's the music reviewer's burden, right? Like, okay, it's bad, Mr. Music Reviewer. Tell me why it's bad. And sometimes my answer is like, I just didn't like it, you know. And I think that honestly, like that sort of hits the nail on the head with where I'm at with In Vain. Is like the stuff that they do that I really like. But whenever they throw something completely out of left field, it's a real 50-50 on whether or not I'm going to actually pick it up. And sometimes I need the context of the rest of the song or some sort of like musical explanation as to why that's cool or why that makes sense. Because, I mean, context is 9/10 of the law when it comes to this kind of thing. And so if there's an overall point, then it's good. But if there is no point, it's not as good. So from that statement alone, you can determine what my credibility is to even be talking about this stuff.
Final thoughts on In Vain, Dan.
I think that In Vain is a very talented, creative band. And I think that what they do very, very well. It just didn't all connect with me. And I think half of this episode is me trying to figure out if it's me or them. And I'm kind of leaning towards me. Unfortunately, Mike was not feeling very well tonight, and nobody thought you guys wanted to hear his Skeletor death voice, or maybe you did.
Real metal shit.
But yeah, he's recovering his voice for an episode that we're going to do next week. And but I feel like with him being a guitarist and sort of being the guy that has played metal for literally years. Probably has his own take on this that would have maybe brought this together a little bit better. But, Mike's on the Discord, so make sure you add him, ask him what he thought about In Vain, because he did absolutely listen to all the records. He just wasn't here to discuss them. So make sure you guys are adding him on the Discord to find out what he thinks about this band. But as far as my final thought, I think that you should decide if you are a fan of progressive death metal specifically. I think you're going to find a lot to like here. But if you're just a fan of death metal or just a fan of death doom metal or black metal, this may not be the band for you because they're not going to necessarily stick to that aesthetic the entire time.
I think there are pieces of In Vain that are perfect. It's like a rubber band being stretched in two directions. Sometimes it's so heavy and it's so melodic at the same time. There are several places where the band is heavy, and it's interesting, but it feels like it's heavy for the sake of being heavy. Then it's melodic, and that's some of the best parts of this band's discography. So for as much as I like the band, I don't think they execute 100% of the time. That's okay, though. We've mentioned Opeth, we've mentioned Between the Buried and Me, I just mentioned Pink Floyd a minute ago. If you're tired of hearing about the same progressive metal bands from the last 20 years and you haven't listened to In Vain, you need to, because they are so close to being perfect. I want to be there when they get there. The band is technical enough. They know how to play their instruments. They know how to improvise. They know how to build a mix and blow you away. So what if they didn't get there on the first go? Listen to this band. You're going to enjoy it, and don't listen to Dan. Let the music play. All 75 minutes of it. You're welcome. Dan, what's your album of the week?
Well, you know what? I'm going to go with Circle Back Terminus. Not out of spite, but because I did listen to it several times while I was trying to listen to one In Vain song. Right? No, I'm kidding. It's fine. No, that is my album of the week, though. Circle Back Terminus. Check it out. They've got an EP called The Gift of Time. That one's super short, too, and I love it. Just some brutal beat down in your face hardcore that you need in your life and in your ears.
We talked about it on Patreon. I just can't get enough of Final Light, dude.
Dude, it's that Final Light. You know it. I know it.
Why can't it be the first light, though? Isn't that what we all really want?
Ask about that, and then dude was all like, "Yeah, I'm not uploading it." So, yeah, you should get on that. You should get on that, my friend. You know who you are.
If you ever wanted a perfect blend of Author and Punisher with everything John Carpenter did in the 80s, Final Light might be your jam. Just saying.
It might just be.
Take us out, DFT.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Discography Discussion. We do appreciate you. And we hope that you have enjoyed the episodes thus far, but we've got some even better ones coming up. If you guys want to reach out to us and talk to us and have a little chatty chat, you can send us an email at danandjoeshow@gmail.com, or you can join our Discord server where we'll probably get back to you a hair faster. I only check the email, once every few days. So if you want an instant answer or instant communication, hit us up, discord.discussmetal.com. Joe and I are there all the time. Mike is there. Jeff's even there sometimes. you just gotta keep your eyes open. It's like he's like Sasquatch in there. It's a rare sighting, but when you see him, you have proof, and he's still alive, and definitely not buried in Joe's basement. But yeah, we hang out on Discord all the time. You guys should definitely check it out. We love the community over there. And you can also find us on social media platforms such as Facebook at facebook.com/discography discussion. You can find us on Twitter at discussmetal. You can find us on Instagram at discussmetal. And, as we've said, a bunch of times, patreon.com/discussmetal. We have all the sweet perks we talked about in this episode, plus more. So hope to see you guys there. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
And on that note, this has been episode 283 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Podchaser, and Apple Podcasts. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion. And please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Can I borrow some money?
$1 a month gets you into that exclusive album review feed.
You can really hear the buzzword of the episode, progression. I gotta say that again because I mispronounced it. The buzzword of... Right. Oh, no. Don't accidentally leave this in the episode. It would be catastrophic. I think I just found my clip for the beginning of this episode. Don't leave this in this episode. It would be catastrophic. All right, sorry. We're in serious mode now.